I'm actually delighted to be here. Thank you very much to the invitation from John. You might have heard I work for New South Wales Ambulance. So what I wanted to do is actually just give you a little bit of an insight into what the paramedics do, and I'm so glad that our previous speaker talked about drones along the highway and sending some of that equipment through. I'm also going to try and represent our Chief Information Security Officer from New South Wales eHealth, so I'll do my very best to work my way through his slides. Unfortunately, Gilbert is sick, but he looks after cyber security. Anyone here fans of NSI and cyber security here? Anyone? Yeah, it's actually a really key focus of ours to keep our citizens safe. So, look, here's my driver. I don't know if you're aware, but the ambulance service in New South Wales is actually one of the largest services looking after the Australian public and tourists in the world. And so some of those stats up there might surprise some of you. Anyone here had to call an ambulance? Yeah, it's horrendous. Look, that's a very high percentage. There is no doubt every one of you will, at some stage, have a need to call somebody that's not looking too well and get a responder there. What I'd all like to ask now is how many of you, let's do it in the opposite, how many of you do not have a smartphone? Doesn't matter what sort of smartphone. How many? Okay, so this doesn't apply to you, but we've actually created some apps that you can download from any store or Google or iTunes, whatever. And the one that I'd ask you to do this tonight with your family or friends, the one that I'd urge you to do is called Emergency Plus. And the reason why this is so important for you and all of your friends and family is that the most common problem we have when we receive one of these 1.3 million calls a year, we're taking a call every 23 seconds, is they say, oh, I can't tell you where we are, or I can't tell you the nearest cross street. So what we've done with this app is very, very simple. It's elegant in its simplicity. We actually give the longitude, latitude, and we're working on altitude because increasingly, like this building, we're on level 3, aren't we? Who knows? Can anyone tell me right now what level we're on? 3, 5, okay. Can you imagine a paramedic? We have seconds that matter to save someone's life from choking or heart attack, cardiac arrest, whatever it might be. 3, 5, paramedics are tending the wrong floor. This happens to us every day. And so we're developing apps for the public so that we can attend to this massive geography around New South Wales. The other thing is I've noticed, as some of you might have, do you notice that your phone doesn't work everywhere? Has anyone noticed that? So we have also one of the largest networks in the world of the old radio network. This radio network was very alive and kicking in over 50 years ago, actually, and we administer one of the largest radio networks and busiest radio networks in the world. So a little bit of interest there around who we are. And my job as CIO, CITO at Ambulance is to support this business. I put that up there because we actually piloted an internship program last year. We get lots of requests every day for attending community events, talking about what we do. Behind every single process supporting our over 3,200 paramedics and a fleet of over 1,500 vehicles is IT. And that tells me something. That tells me that we've got to invest in days like today to actually try and attract each of you into, hey, have you ever thought about a job in this fascinating world of IT? And have you ever thought or drawn to or attracted to working with people like paramedics, doctors, nurses, etc.? They're my heroes. I really can tell you they are wonderful people. They save lives every day. How did I get here? I'm going to give you some tips and tricks because I encourage my children and I encourage my mentees to start early thinking. It's never too early. I noticed that there were some primary school kids here before, and I was just saying to the previous speaker just a few moments ago, it's never too early to start planning. All right, if you get into that habit now, you can actually start to make some really good life choices. And that's my objective today, to just give you from past experience and mentoring hundreds and hiring thousands of people over the years, some tips and tricks that will give you an advantage. One, you've already on the right track, you're here today. ICT is actually the most critical part of ambulance. It's what we call mission critical systems. Mission critical systems are, most of you would think, really, really important and we would protect them. But unfortunately these days there is this increasing risk of attacks. Sometimes for fun, we get attacks coming through from hackers, but also there's that constant threat of a very small minority in society which are looking to disable and disorganise and cause frustration in our systems. So we actually adopt military-grade security in our systems. We work very closely. Over 25% of our responses are joint with New South Wales Police, to give you an example. The car in the picture there is an interesting innovation. I captured it at Bankstown Airport, where we have a number of aircraft and helicopters. Some of you might have seen them. But that's the SWAT, this prototype is a joint development with Mercedes-Benz, who run most of our ambulance cars, and Swatch, the watch. And it's looking at how do we get ambulances to fit into more metro areas and tight areas like we're currently in testing with places like Italy and the UK. Our control centre as well that was up there is, as I say, we've got 4 of them around the state of New South Wales, handling over 1.3 million calls, a call every 22 seconds. Very, very quickly, we are developed last year because of hundreds of requests, an internship program. We've actually had, in fact, this presentation was put together by one of our interns last year, and I speak at universities on, what sort of things could an intern do in ambulance, and particularly in information, communications and technology. And so I just dropped that in there. You see these photos, you notice that a lot of our crew are uniformed. Can anyone think about, many of you here today are in a uniform. Why would we wear a uniform? Any guesses? Yep. Sing it out. Yeah, it's very much about identifying who we are. And also, if you look very closely on the side lapel of these paramedics, and also the police, you'll see their qualifications as well. So we have extended care paramedics now. This is a degree qualification. Increasingly, our paramedics are actually so highly skilled, they can, a bit like the old TV series MASH, we can effectively set up a hospital anywhere roadside if required in a major emergency. In the Martin Place siege that happened in Christmas two Christmases ago, we had 150 ambulance vehicle and paramedics all around that perimeter. We did not know whether and what would be the requirement to attend to those people. So the other thing that we like to describe is that there's so much variety in IT, and I think you've got a pretty good idea, some of you, of just about the range of them. What I'm really interested in is where are the roles in the future? And as the Australian Computer Society facilitated a employment and jobs and the smart jobs of the future and the workforce that we require in Australia to make us more innovative, I think that a good start is what you're doing today, to listen and know that there's many, many opportunities out there for you. New South Wales Ambulance might be. Now, what I want to switch, I'm going to deliver my friend Gilbert's presentation now, and I thought it might be useful to just tell you about some tips and tricks that have come back, not only from personal experience, but other people like yourselves. Maybe it's your first job, maybe it's your part-time job. Some of the things that resonated with me is what the late Steve Jobs would say up there, that this is really important to start thinking about. And it's really important to discover who you are and what you want to do. For me, it took me a while in my career to figure out I really, really like helping other people, and I really like supporting other people. And if you've ever seen the job that paramedics and doctors do to save lives, you'll get what I'm saying. It's a really, really great job that we do. So here's some ideas for you to take home today. I think that so many of you these days, and from every time I speak in universities and classes and schools, what comes back to me is that there is enormous interest in serving the community. So why don't you plan to get work experience and by, if you can't get a paid job, you can always donate your time and volunteer. And so I also spend a lot of my time giving back to the community through some of the roles that I do when I'm not at Ambulance. Public sector, have you thought about a job in government? Have you thought about a job in industry, the arts? And those signs up there just to indicate to you that the world of technology, the world of, the business school here at this university, I know very well, it'll facilitate many twists and turns and enable you to experience a variety of different roles. Because I think one thing's for sure, and that is that you will have the opportunity of trying many, many different things in your future. So you want to try and get a foundation in your skills as you grow. So I talked about planning before and the importance of it. What are some of the things that help you with your plan? I reckon education. I have a view, and my view is that I'm a lot older than many of you in the crowd today, but I really believe that it's about lifelong learning. And I don't stop, I haven't stopped, and neither can you, and it's so easy now, isn't it? You can actually do a lot of your learning online, you can do it in the classrooms here, you can learn off others in your workplace. And so that learning and education is an important feature. It's also important, just like I found when I was working in the United States, that to actually map out a career, to actually have a plan. Here in Australia, you've heard about financial planning. I used to work in the industry for Westpac and AMP and so forth. So I believe it's just as important for you to have a discussion with your parents, with your friends, with those that you respect their opinion, and just sort of say, what are some of the things you think about in your life? What are your goals? What's your vision for the future? What do you really care about? It doesn't matter if it's around climate change, serving the community, saving lives, or somehow miraculously being able to afford a house in Sydney. Whatever it is, start with a plan and then work backwards into the detail. Don't get caught by this trap of, I hear a few of my nieces at the moment saying, I'm going to take a gap year, I'm going to extend that and take it a second year. I said to them, look, that's a great idea, go overseas, experience different cultures and learn from that. But also, whilst you're there, take advantage of working locally, experience what it's like to actually do some, whether it's digging wells in the back of Thailand or working in the big banks in the UK or US. Make sure that you're making the most of your time, because you don't get it back. You don't get it back and you want to get some yield off it. A couple of other slides that I thought might be of interest. These are all easily found if you just go to the Australian Computer Society website, and I'm sure it's also linked to UTS from the careers section. Why IT? The evidence is there. This is a sector of great potential in the future. There's no question that we have a skills shortage right now. And with my ageing workforce that I see in Ambulance, I have to hire people to come in and replace them because they surprisingly want to retire someday. The other thing that I'd say to you is that you can actually, if you're not quite sure what you want to do, you can make a start so easily. So many of my friends and colleagues started like I did in an area totally outside IT, but then found that IT enabled them to do whatever they were doing more easily, more efficiently, more quickly, with more rigour, with more evidence. And in medicine and health, where I work, evidence is king. We don't want to operate or test new drugs on people without knowing what is the downstream impact of that. So just on that note, I thought I'd just say to you, what's the evidence that Andrew's talking about? I'll use personal experience here. I actually started in economics. I actually tried to be a chef and failed. So went back to school and did my qualifications and ended up doing economics and law and accounting and sorts of things. And my exposure to computers, and I'm showing my age here, was a Commodore C64 on weekends. It was pretty much zero. And I actually had a fear of them. And it wasn't until I learnt basic programming that I thought, this coding makes a lot of sense to me. in essence, it's really interesting. For those of you that like any sort of forms of mathematics and science, it'll really appeal to you if you haven't tried it yet. I became a consultant for Anderson's, what's known as Accenture, and after being trained in Chicago and Melbourne and so forth, they started letting me run consulting jobs, and I was able to work on many different mines and different clients around Australia and eventually overseas. And then did pick up from some gap years, if you call them, backpacking trips. Was able to work in the United Kingdom, in Hong Kong and in the United States. In every role that I've had, IT has played a major role in getting to the CIO position that I have today. So some hot tips for you in summary are, I noticed that many of the co-workers that I work with that are still studying part-time are members of the Australian Computer Society student. And I'll put it back to John and the team, but I'm sure that they would like more students to register. The alumni associations, I'm a graduate, I've been a lecturer not only here but also in many other universities. Or join the alumni associations and get involved. Try out the many career guidance systems. They're online, they're private, and they can give you some really good tips. The next tips are, if you're fortunate enough, like my eldest daughter recently, she's so happy, she's landed a job at Macca's. Anyone here work for Macca's? I knew there would be. Why is she happy was a question. Because one of the things is that she's working for a really good manager, and someone that really cares about customer service and training others. Really good, what I call mentor. Maybe you're not as lucky. I won't ask which store. But on a serious note, though, one of the things that I admire about McDonald's, and the same can be said from Woolworths and Coles and so forth, they provide job opportunities for so many of you that are just trying to get your first job experience. It's great to just see that development of your confidence and customer interaction. So I really encourage, and also the money's not too bad, just sort of trying to put away for a holiday eventually and her first car. But the tricky thing was, I sat her down and I sort of talked to her about an interview and how you got to present yourself and how important it is, little things like eye contact. I've dropped into my presentation, which I'm sure will be published later, just some websites that can help you with that. There's an abundance of them. I just chose some randomly. And also make sure that somebody else checks your CV. There's some rules around CVs that you shouldn't break. And the next tip is probably relevant to many of you, and that is the idea we touched on selfies just outside with a couple of people interested. I think it's really important how you present yourself in social media, whether it's Twitter or Kik or Instagram or Facebook or whatever. Ambulance has one of the most sophisticated Twitter and Facebook sites that I've seen in government. We use it to communicate really important messages, like where I started. But I think if I can say this to you, it's never too early to start to develop your profile and make sure that you protect that profile and that you always think, whatever I put up there, I'm happy with in the future. Because it's very hard to remove things for sure. But there's some really good tips up there, in terms of how you present yourself, how you smile, what sort of photos are appropriate and whatnot. And, my best tip is get someone else to do the photos and give you feedback on it. These are looked at by more employers than you would think about. The other thing is, you've heard it from so many other speakers, so I won't labour it, other than there are really good intern opportunities for you. I can see that there's internships being offered increasingly at younger people, and there's some for first-year students right through to final-year students, so at university. So internships are great, and don't overlook the ones that are perhaps unpaid. So I think the other tip is, particularly from observation, in one of my roles I would receive regularly over 100 requests per week for work experience working with the team, and this is unpaid. So in a not-for-profit, I was actually running a youth suicide, mental illness not-for-profit, and we got lots of requests. And I would say to you, think very carefully and get somebody to just check over how you conduct yourself on email. Email is, some people say, less formal than a letter. I think that you've still got to get someone to check and make sure that your emails are not too familiar, and make sure that your spelling's okay, make sure that you're reading the tone of the email, make sure you're very careful about who you copy and how you address it. So those are a few tips, and I think now it's just any questions that you have about New South Wales Health or New South Wales Ambulance. Just at the back there, yep.
Cheers. With the little compact smart cards that you use for ambulances, how does that work? Is that just to carry around the tools, or like what do you put in it?
Yeah, okay, great question. I'm not sure I've got a photo to show you, but would it surprise you guys, in the back of an ambulance, there's about 1,700 different devices. But the most common one that we think we could pack into a drone would be an AED device. It's a resus machine that monitors your condition. So you put what's in it. It's powered by a battery, and it's got tabs on it that are stuck onto the person's chest, so one side of your heart and down just below your ribs. And what that does is measuring your vital signs. It's measuring breathing, blood pressure, blood flow, all of the sort of critical things that keep you alive. The other thing that we have, which you may not have seen, which is a bit larger, is called a trauma pack. This is beyond first aid. It's actually got also some very powerful drugs in it that would be used for pain control, sedation, etc. Because one of the things that happens is when you go into shock, if somebody's in shock, is that the body naturally might kick in a lot of adrenaline, and it might start to shiver or shake or whatever. If you've got spinal injury or broken limbs, that is catastrophic. It makes it really, really hard to put somebody back together again. So sometimes the drugs that our paramedics carry are, there to actually sedate or relax the casualty. The other thing that I'd just say very critically is each of our paramedics carry portable radios. They're probably carrying smartphones as well, but they carry a portable radio to keep in touch and coordinate their activities, so that we can say, look, this person we're going to transport to North Shore Hospital and by helicopter. This child we're going to transport to, say, Westmead Children's Hospital. We have specialties in the system. So we have multiple communication devices.
You were talking about the radio. You communicate via radio, or some old radio, I forgot what it was called, instead of using mobile phone technology. Is that so you can communicate with the ambulances all around New South Wales, and so is that better than the mobile phone technology that we've got now?
Right, yeah, it's really old technology. It's, for anyone interested, it's broadcast over 400 megahertz. So free-to-air TV used to happen at a higher frequency, so you had more information pumping through 800 megahertz. Digital is an even more high-frequent transmission. And so there's a lot more rich data flowing up and down the pipes. Reason why we use radio is, although it's really old technology, you can broadcast it, in our case, much further. So any of you notice that there's these mobile phone towers all around the city, and as you're driving along into country areas, you might lose your signal? It's because digital is certainly much richer, but it doesn't have the coverage and the ability to broadcast it. So look, we're looking at satellite technology. We're talking to Facebook and Google about some of the things that they're doing in third world countries. I think we've got to have both. The other thing in our area of ambulance, you've got to have redundancy. You've got to have systems that can fail and then go to another system. So I like to keep my paramedics safe, so I like to make sure that they have a digital solution as well as the old portable radio solution. So they've got both. Okay, I think, if there's no more questions, can I just encourage you? Oh, there is, have we got time for any more, folks? No? Out of time? Yep, okay. So look, those guys that had their hands up, please come out and just talk to Harrison or myself, and you can add your name onto our list. We're going to email you out some more information, and if you want to be interested in future work experience opportunities, please do. Thanks for having us, everyone.